Hi everyone, I'm Haley Foster, and on Executive Interviews, I'm uncovering the hidden strategies for real business success. Come with me as I dive into candid conversations with business experts that might just change how you define success. Welcome back to Executive Interviews. My name is Haley, and I am joined today by Fritz Chess. We are so excited to have Fritz here today. I just wanted to start out by introducing Fritz. In 1993, he read an article about a pharmaceutical company that sent researchers into remote locations to find ingenious people who used botanicals to cure illness. If these researchers found two separate groups who used the same botanical to cure the same illness, they brought it back to study and to find ways to make the medicine available worldwide. This ignited a spark in Mr. Chess to unlock the secrets of a multitude of botanicals using a variety of extraction and distillation processes for the pure science of it, and to find more healthful and natural ways to produce products for human consumption. Fritz first built the cold finger system for ethanol extractions and distillation in 1993 and founded Eden Labs a year later in Columbus, Ohio. Further research led him to experiment with the use of other solvents, pressures, and temperatures. And in 1996, he engineered his first supercritical CO2 extraction machine. Since then, Eden Labs has led the introduction of safer, more efficient extractions in multiple industries with SCFE technology worldwide. Today, Eden Labs is known for pioneering and significantly impacting medical botanicals such as cannabis, astaxanthin, omega oils, kava kava, cat's claw, nutritional algae, and many others. His interest in environmental impact has also led to new projects in biofuels, cellulosic ethanol systems, CO2 sequestration, environmental remediation, plasticizer extraction, along with many more. Mr. Chess currently resides in Seattle, Washington, and sits on the Seattle Fire Code Advisory Board and continues to create new technology in extraction and distillation for the health of the world. Fritz, did I leave anything out?
That was pretty all-inclusive. It was good. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. We're so excited to have you here today. Just to start off, what sparked your interest in the pharmaceutical field, ultimately leading to you reading that article back in 1993?
Well, the main thing I was doing, I have a degree in basically journalism and science. It's going to be a science writer. And I was working for a publication that covered basically rainforest issues and the destruction of rainforests and the need to preserve them. And so the Shaman Pharmaceuticals thing came out of that because that would be a good reason to save rainforests because they have all these natural medicines in there, a lot of them of which have not even been discovered. And so when I found out about these guys, and I had been getting interested in natural medicine anyway, I sought these guys out and started interviewing them, and basically it just kind of went from there. I did the article, but then, well, I had another friend who had a herbal medicine business, just a small business. And basically, she was just soaking herbs in bottles of vodka and making tinctures. And I asked her, like, how do the big companies do this? They're not just soaking things in bottles. And she said, well, Fritz, that would be something for you to explore. And I did. And I came to find out that most of even the bigger companies that were sold in places like Whole Foods were just macerating, just soaking bottles of herbs and in vodka. And that's just not a very efficient way to do it. So that led me to start developing extraction methods. Kind of went from there.
That's incredible. So you saw a need for change and you just took that and ran with it. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, it kind of fast forwarded to one of the big companies that's been around for a long time, since the 70s. They were still using this process, like a 21-day process to do their herbs, but they were getting bought out by a private equity company who, of course, wanted to make everything a lot more efficient. And so we, took them up to a modern standard where, everything they were doing in 21 days can be done in about an hour and a half. I'm not going to mention the name of the company because I haven't discussed this with them, but I mean, that's the kind of thing we can do for these companies that are extracting herbs. And then, of course, we've developed a lot of ways of, refining the different products out of an herb to get the most potent part, but retaining the whole plant aspect without stripping it of too much.
That's incredible. Yeah, that's so cool that you were able to see that and to be able to say, okay, I think we can make this a shorter, better, more efficient process that maybe doesn't involve vodka and can be a little bit more healthy for consumers. And I just think it's neat that you were able to catch that and to find a need for change. Would you consider like using botanicals in medicine a trend?
Well, it's a long-term trend. So, we used to have apothecaries in this country and where herbal medicine was common, and there was, doctors. It was an approved medical practice. But then starting in about the 1930s, they started removing certain compounds from herbs and then converting them, doing semi-synthetic derivatives, which they could patent. And so that started the whole modern pharmaceutical industry. And I would say it kind of peaked in its power in the 50s and 60s, to where basically the old phrase, better living through chemistry, came from, which was an actual marketing phrase back then. Now it's kind of like a joke on T-shirts, but that was when I would say the pharmaceutical industry, it wasn't as, not nearly as big as it is now, of course, and didn't have as much money, but as far as influence, herbal medicine was on the out. But starting in the 1970s, herbal medicine started coming back, and it's never really slowed down since then. There's the two big trade shows on the East and West Coast, the natural products trade shows, and every year that one in Anaheim gets bigger than the year before. They've had to move from the single building to all these different outbuildings, and half the stuff's like tents outside. But, it's an unstoppable trend at this point because people see that it works.
That's incredible. Do you feel like you were able to catch that like right at the beginning of the trend? Do you feel like you really kickstarted that trend? Where do you feel like you fell in that process?
Well, it was a trend that was already happening. I mean, basically our big contribution was there was just the crude way of macerating herbs, just soaking them in bottles. And then there were these large machines for doing things like soy oil, for example, or whatever. They were just large industrial extractors. We came out with small-scale commercial stuff that a small business could use to create its own products, and we helped spawn all kinds of industries from that. So I would say that was our niche, was developing small-scale commercial and, benchtop home research units, which often led to investing in larger equipment. And then we do make industrial equipment ourselves, and it's usually based on one of our small-scale commercial, and when you've worked out a process using that, then scaling up to a big industrial unit. And so we do have some of those kind of projects under our belt.
That's incredible, Fritz. I love that. I love that you were able to really take this trend that you spotted and you were able to find a place that you specifically could thrive in this trend that was like unique to your business, Eden Labs, and that you were able to just take it and run with. How did you read this trend originally in a news article, and that's where you were able to really understand that botanical herb and how that can impact pharmaceuticals. But how do you continuously spot new trends?
The one I like to talk about, it was a wild period in my life, was probably around 2009. There was a lot of interest. The interest kind of goes back and forth with biofuels, but there was a lot of interest in taking algae and extracting the oils and turning it into biodiesel. And it became kind of a thing. And so I just decided I was going to be the algae biodiesel guy. And there was a little bit of skepticism in a few circles around that, but, really dove into it. And then what got lucky was Obama got elected. And then he put out all this stimulus money for alternative energy. And we didn't go after the stimulus money itself. We went after the people who got the stimulus money. So as it turned out, we basically lived off of, algae biodiesel machines for a couple of years. Turned out that you could make really good biodiesel out of algae, and diesel cars actually ran better on it. They don't sound like diesels. They kind of purr like a kitten. But cost of it's currently too high. So it's not a practical thing. Maybe it'll be scaled up someday, or they'll make other innovations. We're still talking to an Australian company that's still working on it. But it was a trend that more or less passed but never went away. So we're staying on top of it. But it was a big trend in like 2010, 2011.
That's incredible.
But, I had a dream there for a minute that we were going to help solve climate change and put the boot on the heel of the big petrochemical companies and become billionaires in the process. But didn't quite work out that way, at least not yet. But it was an exciting time, and it was an emerging trend for sure.
That's incredible. And so from what I'm hearing, you are just staying really up to date on news. And do you find these trends like through reading like scholarly articles, or where are you looking to find this information?
Well, a lot of times I'm just aware of something and I just Google it and then start digging down. But, they just pop up in all kinds of scientific journals. That's usually where it all starts. And then sometimes it's just like some Instagram posting and I work my way backwards because I'm not necessarily going to trust what I see on an Instagram posting, but I can dig underneath that and behind that and see if there's something real there. And often there is, and often it's just something silly.
That's incredible. Yeah, I love that you even just said like social media. Like, it's crazy that our world has kind of turned to that, where we go from these scholarly articles and these journals, and now we can find things like this on Instagram and Facebook and Meta in general, and be able to spot these trends. That's super cool too, that you take it a step further and do that research.
But one thing that's really cool these days when it comes to herbal medicine is, I forget exactly when this started, not all that long ago, but the National Institute of Health, a big federal agency, was tasked with investigating herbs. And it's a huge, useful resource. I mean, that's like the first place I go is NIH now. They talk about all the different ingredients that's in the herb and what it does and the studies. They never do humans for studies. That's where it stopped. They'll do like Petri dish studies and see that maybe, well, I'm going to use the example of graviola. It's probably the most successful herb at curing cancer. But no human trials have been done. So when you start reading it, you'll always see that, well, you can cure the rats of cancer and you can kill cancer in a Petri dish. But then it'll go on to say, you should not take graviola because the human trials have not been done. So it's actually something I'm working on right now, is getting, what you'd need is a naturopathic oncologist, which is a pretty unique field, and then put together a medical study and just do the human trials. It's pretty risk-free because graviola is not going to hurt you, and it doesn't cost hardly anything. It's an herb, and either it works or it doesn't. It seems like that's going to be pretty easy to prove. So that's an ongoing thing that kind of trending towards now, so to speak.
Fritz, that's incredible. Thank you for sharing that with me. That's so cool that you're able to, one, tackle that and to do it in such a safe way. I think that's something that's really respectable.
Yeah, and with the graviola, I have to be careful not to, it's against the law for me to say that it cures cancer. So I would want to refer to these doctors. What I usually do is just send WebMD has an amazing summary of all the different ways that graviola attacks cancer. So I just send the WebMD link to people. And if you just Google WebMD graviola, it's going to pop right up. And it's pretty amazing what this can do.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll definitely have to look into that. And I love, that's just another resource that you've got under your belt is WebMD. It's so cool that you're able to see all of these different needs in different areas. Like you even talked about oncology, and to be able to see that there is a trend where we need to find a solution and to be able to tackle that. And so kind of going along with that, how do you act quickly on these trends and kind of catch them before it's too late?
Well, it's gotten more difficult. A trend used to start, like I said, with like a journal article and then a mainstream article, and then you could start researching and everything. But a lot of times it comes from the opposite direction now. It might just all of a sudden pop up on Instagram, and there's someone who's really done their research and they know what they're talking about, and they're also good at spreading the word, and boom, that trend's just out there in a huge way. And then you have to work backwards and see, is this real or is this guy just blowing smoke? We used to get a lot of trends from Dr. Oz, but he's not so much of a thing anymore, especially since his Senate run. But it used to be whenever Dr. Oz whatever he was talking about, our phone would start ringing. And a lot of that was, I don't know, some of it was probably good, but some of it was kind of silly. But talking about this subject, I have to mention Dr. Oz, how many times our phone just started ringing off the hook because of Dr. Oz. What really started the company was kava kava. Are you familiar with that herb?
I am.
Kava kava, like in the mid-90s, was not well known, but there were some articles out there, and I had a pinched nerve in my back, and I had read that kava kava with valerian, was really good for those kind of aches and pains, and I figured out who the best kava importer was. It was this guy, Gary Friedman, here in Seattle. And I started getting kava from him. And I guess it was a very difficult herb to extract. And I had figured out how to extract it. That's really what got my toehold in this industry. Was he was friends with all the big herb companies, and all the big herb companies were owned by multimillionaire hippies, I had never met a multimillionaire hippie. It seemed like the two things didn't quite mesh, but so like Gaia Herbs and Herb Farm and all of them, next thing I knew, I was in these penthouse parties at trade shows with those guys, showing them how the kava extractor worked. And that's basically how I got my foot in the door.
That's incredible. So you had all this traction and this buildup. How did you continue that momentum into your other projects?
We just, made a website and advertised the extractors. And then later on, we got like a real CEO, AC Braddock, who, was a marketing genius. And she got us into trade shows and articles and just had a vast network of people she knew that really, got us off the ground, turned us into a real company. Went from, me working out of an office bedroom to 30 employees, a whole little production line making extractors.
That is incredible, Fritz. That is amazing. And it's amazing that you still were able to take that momentum to continue it today, to continue your studies and your research. I have had a blast getting to know you and your story. Is there anything else that you would like to share? Maybe any advice you'd want to leave our listeners with?
Oh, I think I'd like to tell you about the big project it's still not finished. We're still ongoing with it. But you've heard about this trend of using psilocybin and other psychedelics for mental health and different things like that, or actually like growing new neurons in your brain. We were contacted by a South African company about a year and a half ago, and they wanted to set up the world's first legal, commercial, regulated psilocybin production plant. And they were doing that in Lesotho, Africa, which had legalized and set up a regulatory framework. So we teamed up with them. We built the equipment. We installed it last December, and it's working out really well. And now they're listed on the NASDAQ. So I guess Eden Labs can make the claim that we got psilocybin mushrooms on the New York Stock Exchange. We're currently working with these guys to expand their operation, and they're doing clinical trials around the world. And we're currently working on optimizing things. Everything's working well, but you can always make improvements. And then they're looking into moving into some of the other psychedelics like ibogaine and DMT. And so that's a trend that we really capitalized well on. And, we got right out in front. We were the ones that got it onto the New York Stock Exchange. And so, it was the crowning achievement of my career. I keep kind of semi-joking.
Well, congratulations. That is so exciting.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. That's incredible. So what's next? What's next for Eden Labs and you?
Well, I mentioned the graviola. I don't know how far we can get with that, but I'm pretty determined that I want to make that herb really well known, because even people who know a lot about herbs often don't know what graviola is and have no idea. But if you lived in Belize or Guatemala, you would know that if you got cancer, to drink graviola tea, and that there was a good chance that it was going to help remediate it. Maybe not completely knock it out, but certainly reduce the symptoms in almost all cases. So it's just odd that people down there in these little villages know that, but nobody here really knows that. So that just seems like something that's worth putting some time into.
Absolutely. I look forward to hearing updates on your research and to hear hopefully how it works as you do start these trials and learn more about it.
Okay.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Fritz, for joining me today. It was a blast getting to hear your story and getting to learn from you and your experiences. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and thank you so much for listening.
Okay, thank you, Haley. Take care.
I hope today's conversation has given you a fresh perspective on success. Join me next time as we continue to uncover the hidden strategies that drive business innovation. Remember, true success might look different than you think. So keep listening, keep learning, and keep redefining your own path to the top.